Good morning, everybody. And it is a good morning.
It's a great morning.
A great morning. And thank you for being here. And I'm here with the great, amazing Gary Peters, who led the DSCC in such a great way, and he's been terrific. So they say all good things come to those who wait. And this outcome is absolutely worth the wait. After 1 year, 10 months, and 17 days of the longest 50-50 Senate in history, 51, a slim majority. That is great, and we are so happy about it. First and foremost, I want to congratulate Raphael Warnock. I spoke to him this morning again on running, and he'll be up here later today, on running just a great race. Strong, inspiring, unifying, never daunted. I remember calling him the day the vote came in the general election. And even though he was disappointed that he came close but not at 50 and he'd have to run again, he said, I'm raring to go, and we're going to win the runoff. And, of course, he did by not 0.5% or 1%, but by close to 3%. And it was because he did an amazing thing. He was just a person who had great faith, he had great strength, he had great conviction, he had great caring. He's a unique man who has a great future. And I was brought to tears last night watching him tell his story in his concluding line in the sentence where he talked about his mom. And he said she grew up in the 50s picking someone else's cotton and somebody else's tobacco. And last night, this is so touching. Every time I read it, I get choked up. Last night, she helped pick her son to be a United States Senator. Only in America. Only in America. You know, 4 years ago, I began recruiting candidates in Georgia. And my first choice was obviously my friend, Stacey Abrams. She said, I don't want to run for Senate, but there's someone as good as me, if not better, Raphael Warnock. And it took me a while to even convince him to meet with me. He was very busy with the job he had at the Ebenezer Baptist Church as pastor of one of the leading pulpits in America. The minute I met him, I finally met him, I said, this guy is special. If there's anyone who can win in Georgia, which was then regarded as a red state, it is this guy. And it took a few more months of persuasion. I had everyone in the Sun call him. Al Sharpton was on TV today mentioning that. And thank God he ran. And, of course, the people of Georgia are better off. The Democratic Senate caucus is better off. And America is better off because he ran and won. And as I said, he's going to have a great, great future. So that's first and foremost, Raphael Warnock, an amazing man who has now had 4 victories in 2 years in what was regarded as a red state. And one more point I'd make, I give lots of credit to Stacey Abrams. She and her organizations helped take a state that was very red and made it purple. And it's a lesson for all of us. You don't just come into an election 3 months or 6 months before, but you build organizational strength day after day and year after year. Okay. Second, I'm going to talk about why did Democrats defy history in these midterms? As you know, we did. It's the first time since 1934 where every Democratic incumbent won with the party and with being the party in power. That hasn't happened since 1934, that every incumbent of the party in power won. Why'd that happen? Well, first, because we had great candidates, not just Raphael Warnock. Gary and I probably talked to every one of the candidates. I probably did every single day. And their strength and their vitality was just incredible. And they're just indomitableness. Every time there was a setback, none of them said, oh, God, it's terrible. They just moved forward. But there are 2 other points that I would make here, why we won. Why did things change? Why, back in April, when everyone thought we would lose seats in the Senate. Why did we win? And I think two things happened, and I'll take it in time order. First, in May and June, the public began to realize how far right these MAGA Republicans had gone. The Dobbs decision was the crystallization of that, of course, when people said, wow, these MAGA Republicans are serious about turning the clock all the way back. But then there were the two other Supreme Court decisions on concealed carry and on limiting what we could do to stop coal plants from poisoning the atmosphere. There were the January 6th hearings. I think they had an important effect because people didn't just read about something that happened once, but every night they saw on TV these hooligans, these insurrectionists being violent, beating up police officers. I was very touched meeting the Sitnicks yesterday. Mrs. Sitnick went to Madison High School, and we talked about that. And they saw all of that, and they said, wow. And then the third thing is they saw that the Republican leaders wouldn't even attack this craziness. And so about 10 to 15% of the electorate, Republicans who were not MAGA Republicans, who were not Trump Republicans, people who said, well, I'm a Reagan Republican, I'm a Bush Republican, but this Trump Republican isn't for me, and independents who leaned conservative and tended to vote Republican started saying, this Republican Party isn't for me. But in June still, they held doubts about the Democratic Party. Was the Democratic Party talking about things they didn't care about or didn't like? And could they get anything done? And the turning point really occurred that summer, this summer, where we passed 6 major bills, 5 bipartisan, all of which affected people's lives. They were the things people wanted us to talk about. Making the environment better, dealing with the high cost of prescription drugs, helping our veterans who were unduly used, dealing with gun safety, getting American jobs here, not in China, with new industries in the CHIPS legislation, expanding health care. And they said, whoa, this Democratic Party is the party that I like. And by September 1st, I thought we'd win the Senate. We'd keep the Senate. Because the combination of those two things was the powerful 1-2 punch that made us defy all the odds and provided the right nutrient agar so our great candidates, both incumbent and non-incumbent, could prevail. And don't take my word for it. This is what I read Lindsey Graham said this morning. He said, quote, Democrats have done a pretty good job of picking issues that motivate their base and have wider support among the public. We, the Republicans, need to be doing the same thing. I think a lot of people in the Republican Party don't see us doing it emphatically as the Democrats. It's one of the few times I'll quote Lindsey Graham with approval, but he said it. Okay. The practical effects of the 51-seat majority, it's big, it's significant, it gives us we can breathe a sigh of relief. Obviously, judges and nominees will be a lot easier to put on the bench. We are so proud of our record with judges. It's one of the most significant things, maybe the most even, things we've done. As you know, we put on the bench 2/3 are women, half are people of color. There are more black women on the federal bench now than there has ever, I think more today than all the others combined before we got into the majority. Biden became president, and we got into the majority. And they're people who they know what people's lives are like. They're not just corporate lawyers or prosecutors. They're public aid, immigration lawyers and consumer advocates and legal aid people, public defenders. So the bench is looking more like America. Now it's going to be easier. So are the nominees. It's been amazing how Republicans have been able to use the 50-50 Senate to procedurally hold up so many appointments. It's going to be a lot quicker, swifter, and easier. It's also going to mean that our committee chairs have more flexibility on legislation. The number of times chairs came to me and said, I'd like to move this bill forward, but in a 10-10 committee, I can't do it. It'll be tied. That's all going to change because we'll have the advantage on every committee. It's going to mean that our committees will have greater oversight ability, subpoena power. And people say, well, it's the Biden administration. Oh, no, no, no. Subpoena power can deal with corporate corruption and inequities and other problems throughout the country. And it gives us just a lift. The fact that we got the 51 votes gives us just a great feeling, enthusiasm, unity, encouragement in that way. And let me just add, in addition, our caucus has been deeply grateful for Vice President Harris's constant schedule juggling to preside over a 50-50 Senate. She did a great job. We're appreciative. It's part of her job. But I think she's done a lot of other good things, and now she's going to have a little more time to do those things because the need for her to be here will be less. Next, one of the things I hope to do as leader is, even in this new electoral climate, is reach out to Republicans. There are a good number of Republicans in the Senate and the House who are not MAGA Republicans, who know that if the Republican Party follows the hard right and the extreme members in their caucuses, that they'll continue to lose ground as they've lost ground in 2020 and they lost ground in 2022 and in 2018 in the House. And it is my intention to reach out to them and say how can we work in a bipartisan way. And you say, oh, that'll never happen. Well, look at what happened this summer with 50-50. Of the 6 major bills we passed, 5 were bipartisan. And it wasn't that every Republican went along with us, but most did, or enough did. We are going to keep doing that. Turn left, Republicans. Or at least don't turn hard right. It would be a more appropriate, thing to do. But that's very, very, that's very, very important to us to get things done. We want to get things done. And if we can get some bipartisan things done, it will, of course, be better for the country. But it'll be better for the Republican Party, but we'll have a strong, healthy Republican Party that believes in democracy and is willing to get things done as well. And the final thing I talk about before I'm a little exuberant today, I hope you understand that. But the final thing that I would say is this. This election, both in November and now here on December the 6th, shows that Americans believe in democracy. During some of the darker times, people said, "Woo, the democracy, I don't know if it has many days left." But both in micro, what happened in Georgia, despite the efforts of Republican legislature to make it harder to vote, our people voted. People voted. Georgians voted. They said, we're not going to let these barriers stand in our way, even if we have to wait online in the rain. But on a larger level, overall, the American people rejected so many of this MAGA extremism, both in knocking down and not voting for some of these extreme MAGA candidates. But as I said, many of the voters in the middle came over to us because they were worried what the Republican Party under MAGA control would do for democracy. The roots of democracy are deep. This 200-plus year noble experiment is not a fluke. It's hanging around for a long time, as long as we fight for it, and we'll continue to do that. Gary Peters did an amazing, amazing job as head of the DSCC in motivating and uniting our caucus, in choosing a great staff, and I want to give real credit to that staff. I know he will. But Christy Roberts, who's been with the I met her when we asked her to run Tester's campaign back in, I can't remember if it was 2006 or 2012. 12, I think. Shriock ran it in 2006. Is incredible. I was on the phone this morning with her, just thanking her, and the whole staff, which Gary ran and chose, and they were amazing. Our caucus just loved the way Gary did this job, and he deserves kudos, accolades, credit, and happiness for the great work he did. Gary Peters.
Well, thank you, Chuck. It is indeed a great day and a very, very happy day. And I'll just start off first off with Raphael Warnock. What an amazing candidate, but more importantly, what an amazing individual that he is. And it was just so apparent through that campaign. And as we talked about candidate quality, which was absolutely critical for us to win all of these races, you couldn't get a clear contrast between two candidates than what you saw in Georgia. And clearly, Raphael's character, his tenacity, and his ability in the short period of time he's been with us, Chuck, to do meaningful legislation to help people in Georgia, the port of Savannah, to local military bases, to insulin. He definitely deserved to win, and we're just so happy for him. Student loans. He has, and what hitting the ground that quick, now that he's coming back for 6 years, you can just imagine what he'll do for the next 6 years. Before I say a little bit about more about the campaigns, I just want to take a moment to thank Chuck Schumer. I've had an amazing opportunity to work with him on these campaigns. I first got to see Chuck Schumer when I was a candidate for the United States Senate, and I can tell you, as a candidate for the U.S. Senate in Michigan, a real battleground state, I heard from Chuck an awful lot during that campaign. He is very tenacious. He gets involved in the campaign. And as a DSCC chair, he is an amazing partner. He understands these races inside and out. He knows every media market. I mean, it's amazing how he gets involved, and everybody appreciates. Thank you, Chuck, for this victory. That's why he's exuberant for a lot of reasons, but it was a lot of work.
One of the main reasons I'm exuberant is him.
Well, thank you, Chuck. I appreciate it. And I want to thank the DSCC staff as well. Christy Roberts is an amazing person. I don't think I would have taken this job if she wasn't going to take it. She was really a person, a driving force, great political mind. But everybody on the staff, we're blessed with incredible people on the DSCC who have been working their hearts out. The building is empty now because they're all in Georgia. It'll take a while for them to come back, but we're just so pleased with their work, and they require accolades. I want to just step back briefly. Let's look at where we were 2 years ago when I agreed to take this position, and we talked about, Chuck and I talked about it. We knew this was going to be tough. I mean, this was historically a very tough term. You had the president, Democratic president in the White House. Historically, that doesn't look well for the party. We were just coming out of a pandemic. People were exhausted of the pandemic. The economy was in trouble. That is not a great time to be running. That's the bad news. But I was willing to take that on because I'm used to tough races too in Michigan. Michigan is a pretty tough state, and it really kind of represents the kind of the diversity of our country as well. And as you know, Democrats did extremely well in Michigan this year as well. But we knew we could win in a tough environment. But that was the bad news. It was a tough environment. The good news is it was clear the American people really don't like Republicans that much. I mean, that was clear in all of our research. They were saying they don't offer anything positive. They talk about the problems, but we all know the problems. You saw the ads during the campaign. Inflation's an issue. And the American public said, yeah, we know that. We go to the grocery store. We know it's an issue. Tell us what you're actually going to do about it. They never said what they would actually do about it, whereas we did, as Chuck mentioned, the Inflation Reduction Act to reduce cost. We had issues to run on. Our candidates had issues to run on. Raphael had a great record in Georgia, but all of our candidates across the country could run on that record. And then the contrast between them and their opponents was extreme. And one of the most powerful issues for us was the choice issue. The abortion issue was clearly a motivating factor for our base in all of our states. It got people out. I mean, in Michigan alone, at the University of Michigan, students who were in line at 8 o'clock at night when the polls closed stayed in line. The last student at the University of Michigan to vote was after 2 a.m. They stood in line for 6 hours, predominantly because of the choice. We had an amendment, or we had a constitutional amendment on the ballot, and young women in particular, but everybody said, we are not going to let Republicans take our fundamental right away from us. We're going to stay here and vote. And we saw that all across the country. It made a difference. It allowed folks to see the clear difference. And then just one final note to turn it back over to the leader here. It was also about tactics. We knew that we had to have very robust ground campaign, and we certainly saw that in Georgia. This victory that we just had is a result of just an amazing group of volunteers who all came together, volunteered time to get on phones, to knock on doors. It was an army there, as it was in all of our states. We made a tactical decision at the DSCC 2 years ago that we were going to invest more money in the ground campaign than we were in TV and all of the other kinds of things, because we knew that these races are all going to be close. They're in battleground states. By definition, they're going to be close. But if you're on the 5-yard line, you got to punch across the goal line, and that's where you need a field operation, and that's what we did at the DSCC. We spent more money on that than we ever have in history. It was the right decision, tactical decision, as we move forward. And today, we have an amazing opportunity to celebrate for all the reasons Chuck mentioned. So we look forward to going to work. I do share Chuck's passion to work in a bipartisan way. I'm a chair of one of those committees, of Homeland Security. I'm very happy to get another member of the Democratic member and Homeland Security. We're also the Chief Oversight Committee. We'll look forward to having oversight of corporate America as well as we move forward with an ambitious, aggressive agenda. But we want to do this together, and we look forward to working together with our colleagues across the aisle as well.
Thank you. We'll have questions on this subject.
How do you plan to work with your Republican counterparts in the House, given the fact that Kevin McCarthy, if he is to be Speaker, is going to have to work really hard?
I think a good number of the non-MAGA Republicans, including some who won in New York, I know a few of them pretty well, and worked with them when they were in other offices, realize that if they follow a MAGA direction, they're going to lose. And so I think there's going to be a real imperative for them to work with us. We'll have to reach out. We're not going to get everything we want. They won't get everything they want. But I think it will work it's in everybody's interest. That is, the Democrats, all of us, and the significant number of non-MAGA Republicans in both the House and Senate to work together. And I am going to pursue that, with the same kind of energy that we pursued winning this election. Yes.
Aside from all those issues and factors you laid out, Democrats did better than expected without President Biden on the ballot this time. How do you think you'll do in the Senate and maybe even flipping the House with President Biden on the ballot eventually in 2024?
Traditionally, Democrats do better in a presidential year than a non-presidential year. One of the reasons everyone counted us out 6 months ago was because it was a non-presidential year and we were the party in power. And the tradition is that you lose seats in that situation. Of course, we didn't. We gained. So I think, President Biden being on the ticket, if he runs, and if he runs, I'll support him, it would be very, very helpful. Yes.
You were very strategic and thoughtful and intense about how you use reconciliation as a tool in the 50-50 Senate. Now with 51, can you talk about how you see reconciliation? Of course, there's a different House, but and what it might mean for issues like the child tax credit.
Okay. Well, let me say a couple of things. First, I'm not going to speculate on what we're going to do in the next Congress. We'll have plenty of time to talk about that, and we're thinking a lot about it already. And just in general, the child tax credit is something many of us are passionate about, and we would very much like to get it done. It took half the kids in America out of poverty, close to half, not quite half. That's an amazing thing, and it's something that we should aspire to. And and it was supported by a large, a majority of Americans. So we'll keep pursuing it. Yes.
Schumer, you said that subpoena powers could be used with 50% with corporations. Do you have particular industries or companies?
No, I'm not. Again, I'm not speculating about the next Congress. Yes.
You did a great job protecting your incumbents this cycle. Looking ahead to 2024, are you confident that John Tester and Joe Manchin will run for re-election, and have you begun those conversations to persuade them to stay?
Okay, these are, we have great senators. We have a large number who are up. You named two who are in Trump, Republican-leaning states. But look, they're great candidates, and we're going to do everything we can to help them. Yes.
You talked about Vice President Harris having a little more time on her hand, not having to run for the Capitol all the time.
Well, she has plenty to do, believe me.
But does this also mean now that your phone won't be constantly calling Joe Manchin and back and forth here? And Kirsten Sinema, because you have that 51st, but that changes the power dynamic.
Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema are great members of our caucus. They're very valuable. They don't always agree with us on certain issues, but they are tremendous contributors to our caucus, and we'll continue to work with them. Nope. Next.
Now that you do have subpoena power, more control over committees, do you anticipate taking the mantle of any of the investigations happening in the House now that House Democrats?
Not speculating about the next Congress. We got to sit down. We got to talk to our members. We got to figure out the directions we want to go in. Yes.
You spoke
I think the nominees he's put forward have been very progressive and a far cry from some of these Trump nominees who are hard right and MAGA. They're an amazing counterbalance. And if we continue in the same direction that we've had the last 2 years, I think I'll be happy. The caucus will be happy, but most important, America will be happy. Yes.
Do you see the investigations that you're going to be doing in the next Congress as a counterbalance to the investigations that you're expecting to
Again,
get from the House?
You know, as I said, we have subpoena power. It gives us certain abilities. We will discuss as we get closer the various ways we may use them. Okay? Last one.
Your comments about what's going to happen in the next Congress notwithstanding, are there some areas where you think you can peel away those non-MAGA Republicans to support?
I think there are going to be a whole lot of areas where the non-MAGA Republicans are going to want to work with us for the good of the country, but for their own survival. It will just not work. It will just not work if they pursue a MAGA line. And I think, having talked to a few of them, both, and not just the new candidates, in the Senate as well. Again, let me reiterate, of the 6 major bills we passed, 5 were this summer, June, July, and early August, 5 were bipartisan. People are here to get things done, not just to make a speech and be negative. And as Gary aptly put it, in a lot of their campaigns, since they didn't have solutions, they lost. But I think a large, significant number of Republican senators and Republican House members have some solutions. They may not always agree with our solutions, but they're not here just to make a speech. They're here to get them enacted. Okay, nope, not going to talk. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.